Many years ago, in the mainland of Lagos lived a woman named Titi. Titi was a woman whose heart had been hardened by the trials of life. She had lived in the neighborhood for years. It was here that she had raised Dapo, her only son, alone after her husband died when Dapo was just a child. Life had been very hard for her. She worked odd jobs, sold everything from tomatoes to clothes, and she did everything necessary to ensure that her son had the best life she could afford. To Titi, that made her entitled to certain rights, especially from Dapo. Titi saw Dapo through school, and fortunately, soon after graduation, he landed a good job. One evening, Dapo returned home late from his new job at a big advertising firm in Ikoyi, and even though he was tired, he went first to greet his mother in the kitchen. "Good evening, ma," Dapo greeted. "Evening," Titi replied without looking up from the yam she was peeling. "Why are you just coming back?" "I had some work to finish at the office, ma," Dapo explained. "We are preparing for a big campaign, and my boss asked me to stay back." Titi grumbled. "That boss of yours should better not be using you like a houseboy. You should be getting ready to collect your salary by now and not staying late at work for free." Dapo sighed. He knew where this conversation was heading. "Ma, it's only my first month. I will get paid soon, don't worry." Titi dropped the yam and finally looked up at him. "I hope so, because remember, Dapo, all this work I have done for you, you must take care of me. You can't leave your mother to suffer after all these years." "Yes, ma," Dapo replied coldly. His mother had repeated the same speech over and over for as long as he could remember, and every time she said it, it felt like a burden weighing down on him. Dapo wasn't ungrateful. He loved his mother. He respected her struggle. But as he grew older, he started to notice something disturbing in the way she spoke about their relationship. It was less about love and more about death, as though he owed her his life for simply being born by her. The first few weeks at his job went well. Dapo was doing well at the advertising firm, and Mr. Okon, his boss, had taken a liking to him. Dapo's work ethic was strong, and he had a natural flair for creative ideas, which made him stand out easily. One afternoon, while Dapo was in the middle of drafting a proposal for a new client, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his mother that read, "Where is your salary?" Dapo frowned at the message and quickly typed a reply. "I will get paid by the end of the month, ma. Don't worry." But the message that followed sent a chill down his spine. "If you don't bring your salary home soon, I will come to your office myself." Dapo stared at the screen shocked, but he quickly brushed it aside, thinking his mother was just being dramatic. There was no way she could actually show up at his workplace, right? A few days later, Dapo was sitting at his desk when he noticed whispers and curious glances from his colleagues. He looked up only to see the receptionist with an apologetic look on her face, walking towards him. "Dapo, there is a woman asking for you," the receptionist said to him. "A woman?" Dapo asked, looking confused. The receptionist nodded, looking slightly uncomfortable. "She's outside in the reception area. She says she's your mother." Dapo's heart skipped a beat. He stood up quickly, muttering a hurried apology to his colleagues, and rushed out to the reception area. And there, standing tall in her full traditional attire, was Titi. Her bright green gele stood out like a crown, and she had tied her wrapper so tightly around her waist that it looked like she was ready for battle. She had an air of authority about her that made the security guards hesitate before approaching her. "Mama," Dapo exclaimed, trying to keep his voice down. "What are you doing here?" Titi did not seem to be embarrassed at all. In fact, she looked around the office with mild disdain, as though assessing the space to make sure it was worthy of her presence. "I came to collect what is mine," she said in a loud and clear voice. "Your salary." Dapo could feel the stares of his colleagues burning into his back. He was really embarrassed. "Mama, I told you I would bring it home. You didn't need to come here." Titi folded her arms arrogantly. "So, if I wait for you to bring it, when will that be? Next year?" Dapo was at a loss for words. He felt humiliated, and yet he did not want to cause a scene. He glanced around and noticed Mr. Okon, his boss, watching the exchange from his office door with a confused look on his face. "Mama, please," Dapo pleaded. "Let's talk about this at home, not here." Titi was still clearly annoyed, but she decided to leave for now. "All right, but make sure you don't waste my time, Dapo. I need that money." She turned and walked out of the office, leaving Dapo standing there embarrassed. As soon as she left, Dapo could hear the low murmurs of his colleagues picking up behind him. Later that evening, Dapo sat at the dining table, fumbling with his food around on his plate as his appetite was long gone. Meanwhile, his mother sat across from him, eating her food with enthusiasm, as though nothing had happened earlier that day. "Mama, what you did today wasn't right," Dapo managed to say. Titi paused and looked up from her food. "What wasn't right?" "Coming to my office to ask for my salary. That was embarrassing for me." Titi frowned. "Embarrassing? I came there because you did not bring home what you were supposed to. Do you know how hard I worked to get you through school? Do you think this is a game?" "I know you worked hard, Mama, but I am not a child anymore. I can manage my own money." Titi's eyes flashed with anger. "Manage your own money? What about managing the bills here? The food, the rent, everything I did for you? So this is the thanks I get for all that?" "But I am not saying I won't help, Mama. You just have to trust me." Titi shook her head. "You owe me, Dapo. After everything I have done for you, the least you can do is to take care of me." Dapo stared at his mother, frustrated. He had always known that his mother had high expectations of him, but this was totally different. This wasn't just about being a good son. This was about control. Several days passed after the office incident, but Dapo still had not gotten over the embarrassment. His colleagues now looked at him weirdly, and some were even talking about how they never knew he was a mommy's boy. A few weeks later, Dapo came home from work to find his mother sitting in the living room with an angry expression. He had given her most of his first salary, but it had not been enough to pacify her. "Good evening, Ma," Dapo greeted cautiously. "Evening," she replied plainly, and Dapo could sense the storm brewing. He took a deep breath and sat down on the couch, mentally preparing himself for what was coming. "Dapo, did you think that small money you gave me last time was enough?" Dapo's heart sank. "Ma, I gave you almost everything. I just kept enough for my transportation and feeding for the month." Titi turned to face him angrily. "Transportation, food. Is that what is more important to you now? After everything I did for you, that is all you can give me?" "Mama, it is not that. I have expenses too. I am trying to save a little so that I can take care of other things in the future. You know I will always support you, but I have to be smart about it." "Smart?" Titi's voice rose angrily. "So now you are smart and I am foolish. You think I don't know how to manage money? I raised you without a father, without any help. Everything you have today is because of me." Dapo clenched his fist, trying to suppress his frustration. "I am not saying you did not sacrifice for me, Mama, but I can't give you everything. I need to have something for myself too." Titi scoffed and walked over to the window. She stood there for a moment before finally speaking. "You know, Dapo, I used to dream that one day, when you become successful, you will take care of me and make sure that I will never struggle again. But I see now that I was wrong. You have become selfish, just like all those other boys who forget their mothers once they have a little money." Dapo felt guilty. His mother always spoke like this. It was her weapon, her ability to make him feel as though he was the worst son in the world. "Mama, I am not selfish. I just want us to be okay. I want us both to be okay." Titi became emotional. "If only your father were alive, he wouldn't have let you treat me like this." The words hit Dapo like a punch to the face. She had always brought up his father when she wanted to cut him deep. It was her way of reminding him that he was the only man left in her life and that his duty to her was non-negotiable. Dapo stood up looking frustrated. "I'm sorry, Ma, but I can't keep living like this." That night, Dapo could not sleep. He knew that something had to change. His mother's entitlement had grown to the point where it was suffocating him, and he was losing himself in the process. But she's my mother. I can't just walk away. I just need to try and move out of the house for now. But with the way she's going, I may never be able to save up my rent. I'm just fed up. The next morning, Dapo woke up early, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. He had decided to confront his mother, and even though he had rehearsed the conversation in his mind several times, the thought of actually saying the words to his mother twisted his stomach. Titi was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when Dapo entered. "Mama, we need to talk." Titi looked up at him. "About what?" "About everything," Dapo replied. "About how things have been between us. I can't keep living like this, ma. It is too much pressure." Titi's eyes narrowed. "Pressure? What pressure? I am your mother, Dapo. Everything I ask is for your own good. You think I am doing this for myself? No, I raised you to become a man, and now you want to abandon me after all my struggles. Mama, I will always take care of you, but I can't just keep giving in to your every demand. I have to build my own life too." Titi flew into a rage. "What life? The one where you think you are too big for your mother, right? Dapo, everything you have today is because of me, and you think you can just turn your back on me?" Dapo stood up in frustration. "Mama, I am not turning my back on you, but you are making it impossible for me to live my own life. You have shown up at my office, embarrassed me in front of my colleagues, demanded all my money. What do you expect me to do?" Titi faced him angrily. "What do I expect? I expect you to honor me. You think because you have a little job now, you can forget your responsibilities? Let me remind you, Dapo, you owe me. I worked day and night, breaking my back to make sure you had a future. Do you think I am asking for too much?" Dapo stared at her. "You are not asking, Mama. You are demanding. Every time I try to explain, you turn it into something about how I am ungrateful or how I am abandoning you. But I am not. I just want some space to be myself, to make my own decisions without feeling like I am failing you every time." Titi scoffed. "Space? What space do you need? I am your mother. There is no space between a mother and her son." Dapo took a deep breath. "There has to be, otherwise this will destroy us. I don't want to lose my relationship with you, but if you keep pushing things like this, I won't have a choice." Titi refused to back down. "Do what you want, Dapo. Clearly, you have made up your mind. You are no longer my son. You are not the way I raised you. Go ahead and live your life." The following days were tensed. Titi, staying true to her stubborn nature, gave Dapo the cold shoulders, barely speaking to him unless it was absolutely necessary. It was her own way of punishing him for daring to defy her. The house, which had once been filled with the constant sounds of Titi's voice and her sharp demands, was now very quiet. At first, Dapo felt a sense of relief. The space allowed him to breathe, to think clearly. But as the days stretched on, the silence became heavy and the guilt began to come back. He missed the closeness he had once shared with his mother, even if it had come with a price. Now, it felt like a wall had been built between them. Meanwhile, Titi was caught up in her own frustrations. She had never imagined that Dapo, the boy she had raised with such care and sacrifice, would turn against her like this. To her, his refusal to bend to her will was nothing short of a betrayal, and Titi did not take the betrayal lightly. In her anger, she began to confide in her neighbor, Iyabose, who was known for her sharp tongue and meddling ways. One afternoon, as they sat outside their flats, Titi let out her frustrations. "Can you imagine, Bose? After everything I have done for that boy, he now thinks he's too big to listen to me, all because of that small job he got." Iyabose clicked her tongue while shaking her head. Children of nowadays, they don't respect their elders anymore. Once they see small money, they forget who raised them. Titi nodded angrily. "Exactly. I carried him for 9 months, nursed him through sickness, sent him to school with my hard-earned money, and now he wants to tell me how to live? You need to show him who is the boss," Iyabose suggested. "Don't let him get away with this. If he's making money, you should be in control of that money. After all, what is his is yours. Titi's eyes narrowed as she considered the advice. She had always prided herself as being the head of the household, the one who is in charge. If Dapo thought he could live without her control, then he had another thing coming. Determined to reassert her dominance once again, Titi came up with a plan. She would go to Dapo's workplace again. This time, not just to demand his salary, but to ensure that his boss knew exactly who she was and how things would be run in her household. One bright Monday morning, Titi dressed in her finest attire with her gele tied very high and marched to the advertising firm where Dapo worked. This time, however, her entrance wasn't as quiet. She pushed past the receptionist and stormed straight into Mr. Okon's office, catching him completely off guard. "Good morning, sir," she greeted with authority. "I am Titi, Dapo's mother." Mr. Okon was confused and stood up from behind his desk. "Yes, ma, I remember. How can I help you?" Titi smiled, even though it did not reach her eyes. "I have come to discuss my son's salary. You see, I have been the one supporting him for all these years, and I think it is only right that you transfer his salary directly to me. I know how young boys can be. They waste money on unnecessary things, but I, as his mother, know what is best for him." Mr. Okon blinked, clearly unsure of how to respond. "Ma, with all due respect, Dapo is an adult. He is responsible for managing his own finances. We can't just transfer his salary to someone else." Titi's smile shifted. "Sir, you don't understand though. I am the one who raised him. I know what is best for him. I am asking you to do this for his own good." At that moment, Dapo appeared in the doorway, having been alerted by the receptionist. His heart pounded in his chest as he saw his mother standing there, once again trying to interfere in his life. "Mama," Dapo said, stepping into the office, "what are you doing here again?" Titi turned to him and spoke sternly. "I am doing what is right. You have clearly shown that you don't know how to handle your responsibilities, so I have come to take charge." Dapo's jaw tightened. "Mama, this is not the way to handle things. You can't come here and expose our family." "You are ungrateful," Titi suddenly shouted. "After everything I have done for you, this is how you repay me." Mr. Okon, sensing the escalating tension, cleared his throat. "Perhaps this is a family matter best resolved outside the office," he said diplomatically. But Titi was not ready to back down. She turned to Mr. Okon with a sharp voice. "Sir, you don't understand. This is not just a family matter. This is about respect. I am his mother. If he won't handle his responsibilities properly, I will. I raised him on my own. I sacrificed everything. Now that he's earning money, he thinks he can cut me off." Dapo looked at Mr. Okon apologetically. "Sir, I am really sorry for this. I will handle it. Mama, let's go home and talk about this." Titi stood firm and shook her head. "No, we will talk about it here. Everyone should know how ungrateful you have become. After all the years I suffered for you, this is how you treat me. You think because you have a little job now, you can disrespect me." Dapo could feel the eyes of his colleagues peeping into the office from their desk to watch the drama. This was the last thing he wanted, a public spectacle that will expose the issues between him and his mother. "Mama, I am not disrespecting you, but this is not the way to handle things. You are embarrassing me and it is not fair." Titi shouted even more. "Embarrassing you? That is all you care about, your image. After everything I have done for you, you are more concerned about what people think than how I feel." Dapo was at a loss. He turned to Mr. Okon, who stood awkwardly behind his desk, looking at the mother and son in confusion. "Mama, please, let us go home. We'll talk about this privately." For a moment, Titi stared at him, and then, without another word, she stormed out of the office. Mr. Okon cleared his throat again, giving Dapo a sympathetic look. "Dapo, I understand family can be complicated at times. Take some time off if you need to. We'll talk later." Dapo nodded, being grateful for his boss' understanding. But the embarrassment and frustration stared at him. He left the office quietly, not wanting to face the whispers and curious looks from his co-workers. Titi walked the streets of Lagos with a fury in her step. She was frustrated and felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her years of sacrifice, the loneliness of widowhood, and now the sting of her only child turning against her. She could not understand it. How could Dapo, her precious son, the boy she had raised with her blood, sweat, and tears, refuse to give her what she was owed? As she walked to the bus stop, her mind raced through the memories of the past. The nights she had spent praying for Dapo's future, the sleepless nights after his father's death, the hustle and grind to keep food on the table and pay for his education. Everything she had done was for him. So why did he think it was acceptable to live as if he did not owe her the world? She did not go home straight. Instead, she found herself in front of Iyabose's flat again, seeking the comfort of her friend's sharp words and no-nonsense attitude. The jobless Iyabose was sitting outside as usual, and she looked up curiously as Titi approached. Titi, why is your face like this? What happened this time? Titi sat beside her. That boy, Dapo. He has lost all respect for me. Can you imagine? He embarrassed me at his office in front of his boss, all because I wanted to collect his salary. He has forgotten everything I did for him, Iyabose. He's treating me like I am nothing. Iyabose shook her head. This new generation of children, they don't know what sacrifice means at all. All they care about is themselves. But you can't let him treat you that way, Titi. You must show him that you are still the one in charge. Titi nodded her head in agreement, but as Iyabose's words echoed in her mind, a small voice, the one that she has been silencing for years, began to creep in. A tiny doubt whispering from deep within her, asking whether she had been too hard on Dapo. Had she pushed too far? No, she brushed the thoughts away quickly. She had done everything for him, so he owed her. But the nagging voice still wouldn't stop. The truth was that Titi was scared. She was scared of losing the only person she had left in the world. Dapo had been her rock, the one person she believed would always be by her side. If she pushed him away completely, what would she have left? For the next few days, Dapo stayed at a friend's house and refused to go home. He needed space to clear his mind. He couldn't go back to face his mother. The argument at the office had been the final straw, and he needed time to think about how to move forward. Titi sat alone in her flat, staring at the framed picture of Dapo as a child. The apartment felt emptier than usual, and for the first time, Titi allowed herself to feel the loneliness. She had always been so focused on controlling Dapo's life, believing that if she held on tightly enough, he would never leave her. But in so doing, she had pushed him away. She had been too harsh and too demanding. She had always used her sacrifices as a weapon, wielding them over Dapo's head like a constant reminder of his debt to her. But was that really what motherhood was supposed to be? Was she entitled to everything from him just because she had done her duty as a mother? The doubt she had been pushing away for so long finally broke through. Maybe, just maybe, she had been wrong all along. Several days later, Dapo returned home. He wasn't sure what to expect from his mother, but he knew that they needed to talk, really talk. As he opened the door to their flat, he saw Titi sitting at the dining table. She looked up as he entered, and for the first time in a long while, there was no anger in her eyes. There was only a deep sadness. "Good evening, ma." Titi stood up slowly. "Dapo, I have been thinking about everything. I have been hard on you. I have been demanding too much, and I did not see it like this before." Dapo sighed sadly. "Mama, I was never going to leave you, but I needed you to give me space to live my life, to make my own decisions." Titi nodded as tears filled her eyes. "I understand now. I don't want to lose you, Dapo. You are all I have. But I see that if I keep acting the way I have, I will push you away for good." Dapo stepped forward. "You won't lose me, Mama, but we need to find a balance. I will always take care of you, but you have to let me live my life too. I need to make my own decisions, take my own risk, and sometimes even make my own mistakes." Titi looked up at her son, and for the first time, she truly saw him not just as a child, but as a man who had his own desires and his own life to lead. Her voice was soft and full of regret as she spoke. I am sorry, Dapo. I have held on too tightly. I thought that if I kept control, if I reminded you of everything I sacrificed, that you wouldn't forget me. But now I see that I have only been hurting us both. I don't want to lose you. Dapo gently embraced his mother, pulling her into a tight hug, and she held on to him tightly too, as though she was afraid to let go. You won't lose me, Mama, but things have to change. We need to respect each other's space and decisions. I will always be here for you, but you have to trust me to live my life too. Titi nodded. I will try, Dapo. I will try my best. In the following weeks, there was a noticeable shift in the relationship between Dapo and his mother. Titi, for the first time, began to step back, allowing Dapo to manage his own life while still being there for her. She started to see the value in his independence, realizing that letting him grow did not mean that she would be left behind. She also started to focus more on her business and being intentional on building a social life outside her son. Dapo, on his part, stayed committed to his promise of taking care of his mother, but he did so on his terms. He gave her what she needed, not out of force, but out of love and a sense of duty that no longer felt suffocating. Titi no longer asked about his salary, but Dapo made sure to involve her in important aspects of his life without feeling controlled. It was not a perfect relationship, but it was much healthier now. One Sunday afternoon, Dapo took his mother to a fancy restaurant for lunch, and as they ate, Dapo said, Mama, I want to thank you. Titi looked at him curiously. Thank me? For what? For everything, Dapo said. You raised me. You gave me strength. And even though we have had our differences, you have always been there for me. I know it has not been easy, but I appreciate you more than you know. Titi's eyes softened, and she reached out to place her hand on his. And I am proud of you, Dapo. You have become a fine man, better than I could have ever imagined. I did not always see it, but now I know that you are capable of handling your own life, and I am lucky to have you as my son. Thank you for watching this story. Today, I will be talking about responsibility and entitlement. There is a common informal phrase that says that one can only eat from where he labored, and I believe that this is what most parents have held on to, making them blind up to the point that they do not even realize when they have become entitled to their child's life. It is a biblical instruction from God for children to honor their parents. However, that same Bible warns us as parents to not provoke our children to anger. Train up your child to be responsible, and that child will honor you. But demanding and being entitled to every penny of that child is against every moral standards. Surprisingly, it is easier to see the entitlement in others than in ourselves, such that we can easily become guilty of what we are condemning in others. So for me, I believe in taking practical steps to avoid falling into this trap. And one of such steps is to have a retirement plan. Don't get carried away training your child that you forget to set up something that can sustain you and keep you busy in your old age. With a good retirement plan, you will be less prone to entitlement and be able to better appreciate whatever your child gives you. Thank you for watching this story. Please share with me what you learned from the story and also what you loved about the story. Share the story out with your loved ones also, and give the story a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye!